Sounds good.
All right. You should be good about now.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Phoenix Normale, and this presentation is going to be about scrying. It is an introduction. So we're going to start out by talking about a little bit of the history of scrying. I'm going to use that a little word loosely because the history is a little bit muddled since it's such an ancient practice. And then we're going to talk about the trance states, which are very important in order to awaken the ability to scry, that clairvoyance and that intuition. And then we can talk about some of the tools. And then after that, I want to talk about the interpretation of it because unlike a lot of divination methods, scrying, the images you see, they're symbolic of different events, different themes, different main topics. And then I think I'll wrap it up by talking about how to use it with other divination methods, like how it works practically. I personally have been professional scrying since 2018. Um, and I use it with Oracle cards, and I find that it gives a really well-rounded reading. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put it in the comments, and it'll pop up, and I'll try to address those. I apologize if I miss a couple because sometimes if they're coming up pretty fast, they might pop up and then go away. So just repeat it if
Phoenix,
it's
I will make sure that I feed them to you as well. That's part of my job for you today, dear.
okay. Thank you for
Don't
that.
stress. I will help.
Excellent. Okay, so I'll get all the questions, and then the last 15 minutes will be more of like a Q&A of like, so if you want to leave the questions to the end, that also works, and that's just to make sure that everybody gets what they want out of this session today. So with that, I think we should go ahead and get started. Um, I'll show you my pretty tools. So I have the selenite ball that I use, and this was my first crystal ball, and I have a nice little stand for it. And then I personally use the balls. I have some other balls. I have a little quartz one, and then I have a little angelite one. So the history of scrying. Scrying is pretty ancient. It's very intuitive. A lot of people, well, some people, they do it naturally, and some people don't understand what's happening. It's very much a visual form of divination. So it relies heavily on the clairvoyance aspect. So I don't think everybody is really, it's not easy for a lot of people. Some people really struggle with it. And if you're one of those people that maybe you're not really that clairvoyant, but you're clairaudient or you're clair sentient, or another one of the psychic senses is your priority, you might have a little bit of difficulty starting with scrying just because it's so visual. But I believe that everybody can learn it if they practice a lot. It takes a lot of practice. And I think the more you do it, the better you get at it. And I also think that it is possible to get other senses in besides the visual, but it's a little harder. And I say that because when I've been scrying, sometimes I've gotten like words or I've gotten a feeling. And so that could lead into like if you're clairsentient, you might get more of like a feeling from what you're seeing instead of a picture. So scrying has been documented historically. The most famous person, in my opinion, who did scrying was Nostradamus. And it's said that Nostradamus made his predictions by scrying into inked water. And this was like, I believe he was in the 1500s. Um, okay. So yeah, I believe that Nostradamus was like in the 1500s. And so at that time, divination was really looked down upon. It was like, it was witchcraft, and that was like heavily attacked by the state. Um, and so he used inked water in a bowl to see his prophecies. And I think that's really interesting because he wrote a lot of books about, um, okay, he wrote a lot of books about his prophecies, about things that would happen, and a lot of it actually did happen. And some people think that it's a little hard to interpret it. It's just really fascinating to read about Nostradamus. People are like, that's not what he meant, or that is what he meant. But the point is that what he wrote down in general has happened over the centuries. And so I think it's very fascinating that he used scrying as his main method. And it's really a very covert divination method in some ways, because you can do it with like a candle flame, like fire scrying. You can do it in inked water. You can even do it with a cup of black coffee or tea. You just really need that reflective surface to allow the messages and the images to come through clearly. So it's really one of those tools that you don't need to carry around a tarot deck. You don't have to worry about someone finding your divination tools, if your runes or something. You can just do it anywhere, anytime. And that is why it's been around pretty much since the beginning. People have always looked to the divine for information. They've always looked to nature to give them information about the future. And scrying, because it's so intuitive and because it doesn't require a set tool, a lot of people just naturally discovered it on their own, and they've been using it for thousands of years. So it trickles down today to, crystal balls. A lot of people, some people have never seen a crystal ball. Some people don't realize that people use them practically for divination. Some people think that it's like a Hollywood thing, but it's definitely possible to use them, probably not how you think. And we did get a question about the size. I don't believe it matters what size. I think you can use any size. You can use like a tiny one, you can use a big one. In fact, I know some people who don't use any tools for scrying, and they still get the images. And it comes down to how well you can clear your conscious mind, how well you can still your thoughts, and how vulnerable you are to distractions outside of you. Because I think that's a big thing with the scrying is, if you're thinking about something, like thinking about what am I going to have for dinner, and you're trying to focus on the images that you're receiving, you're probably just going to see what you want for dinner. Because the intuition is, you probably know this, but intuition is very subtle. It's like the inner voice, it's the gut feeling that says I need to do something. And that intuition is what we listen to receive the clairvoyant images. So I think that kind of covers the history. So we can dive into the tools. Let me check the time. Okay, I'm only 10 minutes in, so we can dive into the tools because I think that's the fun part, right? So, like I said, you don't need to have tools to do it, but I do think it's harder not to have tools because it requires so much more focus and so much more ability to block out everything outside of you. Whereas if you have a ball to focus on, or you have like a black mirror to focus on, you're not as susceptible to like having your mind wander into mundane things. Um, so I think I'm going to cover the tools and then the trance states, because the trance states are very important to being able to do it. So like I said, any reflective surface works. This is just a normal black hole from the store. You can fill this with water. You can scry into it. I've heard of people doing it under a full moon, because the full moon energy enhances divination and it enhances the clear senses. So you might have a lot of success even charging it or making holy water out of it and then scrying into it on a full moon. And you can even save that water and use it as moon water for rituals later on. And that way it gets double power. It has the moon energy and it also has that divination energy. So that would be water scrying. And you can use a lake, you can use inked water, you can use like a coffee cup, you can use a teacup, whatever, as long as it's dark and it's reflective. And so some people use clear crystal balls. Um, and I I think, I mean, it's possible, but because with the crystal ball, it's a little different. How I practice with the ball when I'm not doing the reading is I would focus my intuition and I'd send that to the ball. And then I imagine it cycling through the ball and coming back to me in the form of an image. So I would basically think of my question and I would hold it and I'd be in a trance and I would project that question into the ball. And then I'd have that information come back to me and I'd see it through my third eye. through my clairvoyant senses. And the images that I get would be symbolic for what the answer is. Um, so it's a little different than the water because I feel like the water is more direct. It already has the energy, and the water is a very intuitive element. Um, so with the balls, you're working with an earth element instead of a water element. So that's kind of how I charge up my balls. Um, so yeah, I'll talk about the balls next. So the crystal balls, you can use any kind of crystal. And some people say they've never seen a opaque crystal used before. I personally have had a lot of success with the opaque crystals. I have a obsidian one that's a little bigger than this, and I have this one. And really, when you're picking out a crystal ball to use, really listen to that intuition. I don't think the size matters. One thing I do look for in a ball is that it has an eye. Okay. So the eye is a naturally occurring formation in the crystal. And when I see that, to me, it says that this crystal wants to be used for scrying. To me, the eye, that's the part I look into when I'm doing the scrying to get images. Um, and I think that it forms, in my belief, as like the animism, when it's forming, when the crystal spirit is forming in that energy, if it creates that eye, it's basically asking to be used for clairvoyant vision because the eye is what we see out of. And that's just my personal belief on it. So I wouldn't purchase a crystal ball without an eye if I intended to use it for scrying. You can use the spear shape, like this one has no eye. This is angel light, and I intend to use this one for angel magic. Okay. So I don't intend to scry with this one. You could scry with it, but I personally, I just don't feel like it wants to be used that way. So it's all up to what you believe and what your opinion is on it. Some people say the occlusions, like this one has a nice rainbow in it. The occlusions help them get more details into what the ball is trying to say. But ultimately, that's up to you how you read it. And you can really use any medium that you feel comfortable with. Another tool that is used in scrying is fire scrying. So I have some nice candles right here. So the fire scrying uses the flame, and you use the same technique and you gaze into it and you receive pictures, images, or words from the flame. And it kind of, it's a little different. I've done it a couple times. Excuse me, but it for me, the images just kind of float into the flame and it paints like a picture in the flame and then it goes up. That's how I've experienced it. I've seen some people take pictures, actual pictures, images with a camera of like faces they've seen in the fire. And it could be really cool because fire is always moving. So it's transformative, it's changing. So you get that different perspective into the scrying. You might see it's probably easier to connect with the other realms or connect with the ancestors through fire scrying because it has that transformative energy and it's moving. So I feel like that if you're trying to use scrying to connect with a different plane or a different time, fire scrying might be more beneficial for that, or smoke scrying. Um, but I feel like the ball is more about predictive future type divination. So you can also use the smoke for scrying. You can use an incense stick or any smoke. You can use uh, burned herbs that you're using in a ritual, and you can scry into that smoke, and it has the same effect as the fire, except I feel like the smoke is more present. Yes, yeah. So you can see stories in the fire, and that is a great example of scrying, fire scrying. It's very changing. It has a lot of information packed into a small amount. But with the smoke, I feel like the smoke scrying is more present. So when I did smoke scrying, I saw an entity in the smoke that was around me. So I feel like with the smoke, it kind of stays in the area and then it dissipates. And I think that quality brings out things that are around you. So, for example, you could use smoke scrying to connect with your spirit guides or another entity that's around you that you're aware of. So those are kind of the tools, like in a nutshell, of the scrying. I've even heard of people scrying on like a wall or like into the clouds or the sky, and that also I feel like that's more internal. So if you're using like a wall to see the images, I feel like that would be more about like internal processes rather than what's happening around you or in the world. Um, oh yes, black mirrors. I almost forgot to mention the black mirrors. I put that in the description. So black mirrors are basically the same as this bowl. You can make one really simple. If you want to practice, you can get like a frame from the dollar store, like a glass picture frame or a document frame, and you can spray paint or paint the inside of the glass with black paint, and then put like a black piece of construction paper under it, and then put it back together, and you can make a really nice black mirror with that. Traditionally, the black mirrors are made of obsidian, and there's a lot of metaphysical history that goes behind that. So, if I was going to buy a black mirror, I'd look for an obsidian one just because the energy of the obsidian as a crystal and a fire stone, um, it's very protective, it's very grounding, and it really is truthful. So, people have heard of like spirits coming through black mirrors, and that is definitely possible. Usually, you would have to summon them into the mirror to have them come out. Um, and like black mirrors are great to use as like a portal to see into different dimensions, different worlds. So if you are trying to connect with your ancestors, for example, through scrying, you probably a black mirror would be your best bet, because it has that protective grounding energy and very truthful, and yeah, and it can come through really clearly. It's really good for peering into the other world and connecting with entities that you want to connect with. And so intention is everything. I will get to the questions soon in just a minute, but the intention's everything behind scrying, regardless of what tool you're using. So, for example, the balls, if you're predicting the future, you could have that intention. What do I want to know about the future before you start scrying? Or if you want to connect with an ancestor and you're using the black mirror, you can say, I want to connect so and so. I'm focusing on that person's energy and I'm inviting them into the mirror, and then you would start scrying. The intention is kind of what reaches out and grabs the information that you're looking for from the universe so that you can receive an appropriate answer. Okay, so yeah, so the covering, I believe we
Next,
should.
before you get to
uh,
covering, 1 second. Um,
okay,
Also, someone asked, and it got swiped into me in private chat instead of the big chat.
okay,
Can you also use a pie dish with water?
yes. I would avoid anything with any kind of design on it. So if it's like a colorful dish with lines in it, I wouldn't use that because that color and that design can interfere with the messages that you're getting. Because sometimes when I'm looking into the ball, I just see a color fill in. I see purple or I see like a green, or and if your dish is colored, it could impede that meaning because you think that a color is coming through, but it's influenced by the color of the dish, or if it has designs. So if I was going to use it pie dish, and you definitely can do that, um, I would either use a plain colored like white dish in a dark room with like candlelight.
I
You
also
know,
misread that. I think they
like,
meant a clear dish because it says on a black cloth.
oh
I,
yeah,
I misread the question. I'm sorry.
it's okay. It
I'm
happens.
trying to read fast.
Okay. Thank you for moderating. So yeah, if it's clear, absolutely. Yeah, as long as the background is very neutral, either black or white, no colors other than that, because like I said, it impedes the meaning. Absolutely, if it's clear, you have water in it, you can put it on a black cloth, that's great, because that's essentially the same thing as having, a bowl of water or having a black mirror, except it's not obsidian, but it's the same thing and it would work the same as a black mirror or water scrying. So that's actually a really easy, good idea. I've also seen people get like a black plate and they've put like a crystal ball on top of it and then scryed into both the water and the ball at the same time. So it's okay to experiment with that. Just find what works for you. Just be careful that it doesn't have any designs on it because that can get confusing with the images that you're getting. So I hope that answers the question. The next one was, I don't remember the next one.
I interrupted you on the next one. It was covering up the mirrors when they're not in use.
Okay. So yes, I always cover my scrying materials when I'm not using them, except for the dishes, because I feel like water is just a pure element. So if it's not a pure element for like fire or smoke or like water, then I would dump it out on the earth, um, to return it back to Mother Nature so it can recycle that energy that was used. But if it's a mirror or if it's like a crystal ball, I always cover them. And what you want to look for with the cover, I believe that you can be any color, and it can have designs on it, but you want it to be opaque. You don't want to be able to see through it, because if you can see through it, some energy can seep out. And there's two reasons why I cover them. So I wrap mine like this and I twist it. And this cloth has a lot of sentimental value to me because I got it in India when I was there, teaching some people about witchcraft. So it's very special. But anyway, I feel like I wrap it like that and I just put it anywhere. I feel like the ball or the tool picks the cloth that it uses. Okay. I do this with my oracle cards as well. I cover them with a cloth when I'm not using it. And the reason why is because the more you use your tool, the more psychic energy it's going to accumulate. The tool is going to get used to that purpose. It's going to hold that energy and it's going to admit it into the atmosphere. So you don't want your divination tool picking up all the energies around it, because that's its job, to pick up energy, right? So I always cover it because it prevents the energy from absorbing. It also prevents the charge of the ball from seeping out. I feel like at first you cleanse them normally like any crystal. I put mine in salt, do your cleansing, and then the same thing with the mirror, just cleanse it like you normally would. And then you charge it. So I do a consecration just like I would on any tool, like an athame or a wand. I do the same thing. And then with the intention of accuracy and clarity for my information, everything that comes through, I want it to be accurate and clear. And then at that point, I can start using it. And then I always cleanse it out when I'm done, so that it's not holding the previous information, but it still holds that charge of being a magical tool, because it is a magical tool and you want to treat it like any other tool. So I do cover mine to show them respect and to prevent the energy from seeping out. Um, and then when I'm using it, I take it out. So it's if you're not like if you're, for example, doing this professionally, and you have an altar at your work or whatever, it's okay to have it sitting there while you're waiting for a customer, because your intent is to use it as a tool. But if you're done for the day and you're like all packed up and you're ready to go do something else, I would cover it up, because my intent is no longer to use it as a magical tool for that period of time. So I hope that that answers the question. And then, oh yes, the trance state. So we're almost halfway through. So yeah, I believe that the tool picks the cloth. As long as it's opaque, it's okay to use. And then I think if you even want to use this as your altar cloth while you're doing the work over that specific tool, I think it enhances it, because that tool has a bond to its cloth. And if you're using the tool on the cloth, it basically is saying, yes, I want your energy. I want your information. And I feel like it can kind of enhance the session just a little bit, but that's kind of up to your experience. You can play around with it. Um, so the trance state is very vital to scrying. So if you have any more questions, put them in the comments, please. And so we're going to move on to trance. So the trance is vital because, like I said initially, if your conscious mind is in the way and you're thinking about what am I going to have for dinner, or like what am I going to do next, it's going to get in the way of what you're receiving. So what I do when I start scrying is I meditate. I go into a state of calm and I clear my mind. I become in like a peaceful centered state and I ground and center. And then I imagine walking down some steps into my core where I rejoin with my higher self. And there's lots of different ways you can get into a trance. Meditation is probably the simplest, and you can even invoke your higher self or call in your spirit guides. once I'm in a trance, I usually open my crown chakra and my third eye chakra, and I ask the universe. Yeah, I will do that in a second. I ask the universe for the stream of intuition to come through me with accuracy and clarity, and I imagine that intuition coming from space and filling my body, and then I start my session. And so that process for me clears out my conscious mind and it gets me in a place where there's nothing but oneness with the divine. And that is what I want to tap into when I'm trying to receive information from spirit. And it doesn't matter if I'm trying to connect with another realm or time, or if I'm trying to connect with a specific person, or an ancestor or mediumship or divination, it's irrelevant. The point is that I'm becoming one with the universe and with the flow of energy. And I think when you're in that state, you've received the most accurate information. So I will address the question. There's lots of ways to go into a trance though. You can use meditation, you can use like a visualization process, you can chant. I know some people that chant a tone, like they would say a mantra or they just like make a sound and that gets them into a centered, grounded state. All of those are equally valid. It doesn't matter how you do it. What matters is that you do it and that you're in a trance. Because if you're not in a trance state and you try to scry, you're just gonna all the stuff in your mind is gonna come up, and it can be kind of traumatic because if you have emotions that you're trying to suppress, they're probably gonna come out when you're trying to scry. Um, Unless you're really clear about your intention. So, so yeah, so the tools, the cleansing, I use a method that is in the Corellian tradition's first degree, which you can find information on that on witchschool.com. They have a class that goes over this. They also have a great class on scrying. So the way that I was taught to cleanse things was to make counterclockwise circles and visualize a bright yellow. Um, and that is one of the exercises. The bright yellow is a cleansing energy. And so I do that over the ball and I push it out and through. And then I imagine like water coming from the sky and cleansing it and going through the ball. And that washes out all the energy. Initially, when you're doing a consecration, it doesn't matter how you do it. What matters is that you do it in a way that you believe is powerful and effective. You don't have to use this method. You can use, for example, you can use smudging or saging, or you can use an incense, or you can set it in salt. You can put it out under the moonlight. Yeah, so the link would be witchschool.com. I don't know how to put it into the chat while
I
I'm
got you.
on. Okay, so witchschool.com is the Correllian Educational Ministries. It is their school for the Correllian tradition. And the first degree program is free and it's absolutely fantastic. Thank you. I highly recommend it. It's great. It goes over all of the consecration and the cleansing and everything. And like I said, it's a method, it's not the method. So it doesn't matter what method you use. What matters is that it makes sense to you and you feel that it has been consecrated and made sacred. Okay. There's lots of different methods out there. So any tradition, they all work equally. It's the intent behind it that is going to make it powerful. Okay, so I hope that answers the question. So I was talking about the trance states, I believe. Yeah, so I've heard people intoning, like saying om and just holding it. That can get you into a trance. You can use like a singing bowl to get you into a trance state. There's lots of different methods to do that. Meditation's a great one. Some people use movement, like Tai Chi is a good example of a magical exercise, a magical movement. And so if you have a certain stretch or like a certain mudra that you use that gets you centered and grounded and it gets you into a state of like pure oneness, that can work as well. Like I said, it doesn't matter what method, it matters what your intention is. Um, so I guess I will move on to intention since we talked a little bit about the trance. So the intention is everything when it comes to divination, but especially when the divination is abstract. I would call scrying a more abstract form of divination because you don't have a book that tells you what the card means, right? You don't have that number to say, oh, you know what, that's a three, and I know that three means cycles and magic and communication. Like you don't have that reference when you're scrying. So it's super important to have a very clear intention of what you expect out of the session. Um, and if your intention is to speak to a deceased ancestor, that person may very well appear in the ball and you can talk to them. It's kind of, it's happened a couple times to me when I was trying. I wasn't expecting it with professional clients. I'm like, I'm seeing this and I'm seeing that. And I'm like, okay, so someone's coming through the ball and they look like this and they're telling me this. And, and it's kind of overwhelming because you really, it's almost like opening up a window and like seeing them uh, on the other side, and you just kind of want to talk to them telepathically. And this really comes down to what your main clairsense is. So for me, I see the messages written out like a it's like written in a sentence. Some people will hear that, other people will just feel it. Sometimes I do get a strong sense from my ball. So it really depends on your intention, and it also depends on what your senses are, what kind of information you're going to get. Um, but it's important to know how to interpret that information as well. And I feel like this information is across the board with any tool because it's all the same process. You go into the trance, you gaze into it, you receive the information. It doesn't matter if you're using a ball or water or if you're using a candle, the information is going to come to you in the way that makes sense. Excuse me. So, I, so there's that. So then there is, I feel like I'm missing something. If you have any questions, let me know. I feel like I'm missing an important part of what I was saying, but I think I'm going to move on to the interpretation. Um, so aftercare process. This is good. Okay. I definitely do aftercare. Whenever I was taught, whenever you open something, you have to close the thing. So, like I said, with my process, I open my crown chakra, I open my third eye, I channel that universal energy, I call in my spirit guides. I have to undo all of that when I'm done, right? So I would start by cleansing the ball, doing my little cleansing, getting all the information away. Um, and then I would disconnect. I imagine my arms are scissors and I'm cutting that energy off from the ball. Like I said, the ball is full of energy. It's going to accumulate psychic energy the more you use it. So it might even feel electrified after if you use it a lot. So you're going to want to cut yourself from that intuitive flow, and that's okay. That's why we wrap it up. Um, then I cleanse myself. So I imagine a waterfall streaming down and cleansing me from my crown to my feet. Okay. I'm clearing myself out. And then I allow my spirit guides to leave. I thank them. I dismiss them. They step back. And then I close my, no, first I disconnect from the universe because I open that connection. So I have to shut it down. Then I close my third eye. I imagine like a box closing. I'm going to close my third eye and I close my crown chakra and I pull it down and then I ground myself again. And if I'm doing it on a client, I'm going to want to disconnect from them too after the session so that I'm not connected to their energy anymore. And that is how I close it down. And then there was another question. Oh, the new moon or full moon. It depends on your intention. Okay. So if you want information about yourself, if you're saying, I'm struggling with this problem or I'm struggling with depression, I don't know what to do about it, you would want to use the new moon for that. Because that is the dark moon is all about going inside yourself. It's a dark period, right? So it's reflection. So I think new moon would be more self centered on yourself, and you're going to use like a mirror, or you're going to want to use like the inked water or like some kind of more introspective method. If you're trying to go for spirit communication, I would use the full moon and I would use fire or crystal ball or And that would be more information that's out there because the full moon enhances those intuitive abilities. It's going to really like power up your clairvoyance so that you're able to see things a lot clearer. You're getting the information easier. So you're going to want to look at like divination for the future. You're going to want to look at like talking to someone or an ancestor or looking into the past or something. On a full moon versus looking into like what's going on within, what do I need to know about myself, would be more of a dark moon activity. So it all depends on what you're doing. You can also use these methods in magic as well. It's not just divinatory. You can use it to like send it out by pushing it out through the tool into the ether. You can kind of manifest that way, especially if you're working with spirits and you're doing it. So it's not just limited to getting information. You can also give information to the other side as well. Um, and that I feel like it's the same process. It's just kind of the intention is different. And you're instead of cycling the energy through the tool, you're going to just push it out instead of bringing it back in. Um, so I hope that answers the question. And then I lost where I was. I think I was going to talk about the symbols next. Okay. So the symbols, the information you're going to get is going to be symbolic. And I believe, and not every person practices this way. And in the end, your beliefs are going to be what is true for you in your practice. I believe that the information, the symbol system is based on the client who is asking the question. So if I'm asking a question to my own ball, the symbol system is going to be mine, right? If I'm doing a reading on a client and it's their energy that's asking the question, that's going to be their symbol system. So, for example, I always tell my clients this: if you see a river, right? If I see a river in the ball, um, that could mean very different things to me, from me to you, right? You might think a river is scary or treacherous or dangerous or uh, it could be something that's like, I had one client tell me that she viewed water as being dirty and, and like gross. And it's really funny because I've always thought of it as this cleansing, like purifying. So it all depends on your experience of how you view the thing that is being seen. Um, so, like, I would view a river as healing or calming or peaceful. So it all depends on the person, what they view that symbol as. And it's kind of like dream interpretation in the sense that it's not literal. It can be literal, sometimes it is, but it usually is not. And you're really going to have to listen to your intuition. Does it make sense? How all these images, do they make sense together? Do they paint a picture? Because I did see an image of like a house with like a yard, and I was describing it one time to my client, and he said that was where he lived. So it's not always symbolic, but it's usually symbolic. It depends on what the client needs at the time. And that is why I always charge my tools with the intention of accuracy and clarity, because it might not make any sense to me at all. But if it makes sense to them and they understand what it's saying, that is basically that's the job, right? I'm not doing it to get information about their life. I'm doing it to see something, to give them clarity into what is going on around their situation in their life. So really, you don't have to know what your ball is saying as long as you're able to explain it in a way that makes sense to the client. Um, and I also noticed that it really gets to the heart and core of what's going on. So, like, let me check the time. Okay, we have like 20 minutes. So basically, when I'm doing a reading, I use it with oracle cards. You can use it with tarot, you can use it with the runes. I start with the ball because the ball, I've noticed in my experience, it always cuts right to the core of what is going on. It tells you what the problem is, it'll tell you what's happening. It's not going to sugarcoat anything. You have to be kind of careful because sometimes it can be super emotional, especially if ancestors come through the ball and you feel all that emotion. Um, but it can be super deep because sometimes people are like, they ask things like, what is my love life going to be? And it's like, okay, that's a nice fun question. Then you look at it, and it's like, oh, like it tells them things like, it could be super deep, it could be super personal. Like maybe they have an issue accepting themselves, and it will tell you that in the ball, whereas the cards might just say you need to reflect more. Um, but I've noticed that the symbols, they're short, they're quick, and they're really, really powerful if you're able to think in terms of what does this represent for the client? What does this symbolize? And I tell them that up front, and then I see the images. I tell them to write it down because if you don't know what a symbol means, just meditate on it. Think, okay, this is symbolic. What does it represent to me personally? What could this mean for my life? And a lot of times they walk away saying, wow, that made so much sense. Um, and it really is a learning curve, especially if you're not that visual. But I think that the more you do it, the better it gets and the easier it becomes to feel that channeling of the energy and to get in tune with what clairvoyance is for you. Um, and I definitely think the more you do it, the better you get. So if your images are kind of fuzzy or you're not getting something, just keep practicing and don't push it. If you try to force it, it's not going to work. Sometimes like tarot, the balls can get attitudes and they're like, no, I don't want to answer that question. Sometimes it just gives nothing. And that you just have to say, I'm okay with that. That must be what I need right now. And just keep trying another time. And then yeah, so I think that kind of covers the symbolism. So if anyone has questions, go ahead and let me know about it, and we will give you guys some time to ask all the questions because we're almost done with it. But another thing I do with my readings is I blow into my ball. Um, because it blows away the energy. So if I'm reading for someone, it has bad energy. I say, I see this, and this, and then it goes away and it fades away. And I say, you know what, I'm going to blow in it to see what happens next. Because sometimes there's a next step that isn't a continuation of what you're already seeing. So I blow into it. I move my ball around. I gaze into it. When I'm looking in it, you soften your gaze. You're going to want to look through it and behind it, and you look with your third eye. The information comes through your third eye. Automatic writing. So I don't have any experience with automatic writing. Um, Not yet. I don't use it. You definitely can try. I found that crystal balls, they work really great with a lot of different methods of divination. Um, I think that the ball likes to be first, or scrying likes to be first, just because the energy is so heavy and the information is so dense. You can try it with automatic writing, especially if you're using it for mediumship and you're getting a person in the ball. You can definitely say, okay, I want you to like use my hands to write something. That you definitely possible. Um, it's really easy to see like letter, like I can see like if they're telling me something, you can ask the spirit, please show me that in like a written form. It might appear in the ball. I would definitely experiment with that, especially if you like automatic writing. I definitely think that would be a really great thing to explore. um yeah, so negative. Okay, so as a portal, the thing that comes up, actually that comes up a lot, that's a great question. Yes and no. Like I said, the intention is super important. So if you're using a scrying medium as um, for mediumship, or to connect with your ancestors or connect with the spirit or summoning something into the scrying medium, it definitely can open a portal. Um, it can happen, but the thing is, you have to be careful about your intention. It's unlikely. For example, I feel super confident doing my ball because my ball is consecrated, my ball is charged, my ball is mine. I bound my ball. I know that anything that's going to come through it is going to have to get through my shield in order to like take advantage of it. So the thing I would say when scrying, if you see an entity that feels negative or feels off, or if it says something that you don't like, um, simply put simply put up your boundary. Say, you know what, you're in my tool, you need to get out, and I'm not going to talk to you anymore. And then you shut it down. You shut yourself down. You disconnect. The tool might be icky. It might have the thing in it, but if you're wrapping it up, I doubt that the thing is going to get out of the tool. right? Because this is going to protect that energy in it. If your tool is consecrated, it really should already have a protective barrier around it. So the thing is going to be in the tool. All you have to do is put it out in the moonlight. You know, all you have to do is put it in salt, just cleanse it. Say, you know what, I'm not going to use this tool until I know that the thing is gone, and just put your boundary up, and that's it. You know, and it's really super simple because it's indirect. It is a portal. You can open the door, you can see them, but if you don't like what you see, just close it. Right? It's that simple. You just close the door, and that's it. It can't get out of the tool. I hope that answers the question. So we have more questions. And this is the last workshop of Pagan Pride. So I'm kind of excited to be the last person of Pagan Pride. Yeah, so we have a question about the runes, and we had another question. I think it was protection. Um, Use the protection that feels right for you. I believe that intention is very powerful. So I wear amulets. I wear like empowered, charged, enchanted amulets. I've made some for friends. Um, so I always wear my amulet whenever I'm scrying, regardless if it's for me or someone else, just because if something does get through there, I want to be protected, right? Worst case, I don't like the thing, I shut it down. I'm like, at least I'm protected. You can use whatever protection method you want. I definitely think you should protect before you do it. And ultimately that's up to you. And then what were some other questions? We have about 10 minutes.
You
Thank you,
had
everyone.
a question about using music. I assume just during your readings. You also had a request for a sample reading. I think those are the only two questions you asked.
Okay, so music is definitely a yes. I use music all the time when I'm meditating. I think that music goes along with that chanting. It goes along with the mantra. Like I said, some people get into a trance by like intoning. And so if that's what's keeping you in the trance, go ahead and use the music because that is powerful energy, right? And as long as the music is it's something that resonates with what your intention is, I definitely think it's a great thing. I would say you don't want any lyrics. Chanting is okay. I don't like lyrics because lyrics and words have intention. And if your word is coming through and it's going through your head, you're going to be thinking about what that word means, and that could come out in what you're singing because it's a conscious thought. So as long as it doesn't have words, I think music is absolutely wonderful. Um, I think there was a question about runes. You can definitely use runes. I would use them the same way as an oracle card. So I would look into the ball. I'd see what's going on. I'd say, this is what I see. I see this image and that, and this is what I think it means. Then I'd pull a rune. I'd say, what does the rune say? And most often when I do that, the rune is just summarizing what I already said I saw on the ball. So it can give you some information, it can give you more details, but I think it just kind of gives you clarity. It says, yes, you're right. I hope that answers. I definitely think they work well together. And then I will do a sample reading. So who does someone want a sample reading? Do we have like a volunteer? Who
Oh,
asked the question?
let them unmute themselves. It was Julia who asked for the sample reading. You can unmute yourself now.
Okay, so it was Julia. We can probably do a couple sample readings too. So who wanted the sample reading?
You should be able to unmute now, Julia. There you go.
Okay, I'm slow.
Okay. Okay. So I open myself up before the session. Go ahead and think about your question or your topic and go ahead and focus it to the ball. So focus on the ball while you're focusing on that question. You don't have to tell me what it is. So while I'm doing this, everyone, I'm imagining her energy and her focus filling the ball. I'm kind of pulling it into the ball. I'm not pulling it. I'm not touching it. The ball is absorbing that focus. I think it feels good. So it feels heavier when I get the information in the ball, and it feels lighter after I cleanse it, right? We've experienced this. Okay, let's see what I see. So this is showing me like a crescent moon, and it's also showing me a park that is like a crescent. It's around the left-hand side, and there's a lake in the middle. It's very reflective. It looks like it's daytime, and I see some like oak trees lining that crescent park. So the lake is a crescent. There's oak trees. It looks like there's houses off to the far left. Um, I see a car coming from the right-hand side driving to the left, and it looks really run down. It could be a truck, and it looks like it's covered in rust. And I see some green grass. So that is what I'm getting. So I would interpret that, and it's up, think about what that means for you symbolically. I would say that water is very emotional. So that lake of reflection would indicate that you want to think about how you feel about the situation you're dealing with. And then I would say that the trees, oak trees, are growth and wisdom, would be gaining wisdom because it's on the left hand side. So that's the past. I would gain that wisdom from the past. I would use that in my decision of what's happening. And then the houses are in the far right or the far left. I would say that it's time to move on from the idea of security and move into what's happening now, because the past isn't the past, right? And then the car is movement. So that's coming from the future forward, and it's run down. So I feel like you're thinking way too far ahead of what's going to happen. And there might be some paranoia a little bit about future events. And I think that that is ultimately eating away at you and making it unable to actually move forward. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does.
Does it answer your question?
Yes, not in what I thought was asking, but I have so much going on in my head. It's very possible that what I was asking, I thought I was focusing on, wasn't my real question.
That happens a lot. What was your question? It's freezing for me.
Yeah. There you go. You should be able to talk now, Julia.
Okay.
Oh, that's weird.
It is.
It keeps telling me low system resources, but I don't have anything else open. So I don't know what that's
Okay.
about. I would say that it is giving me an answer about something that was in the back of my mind and not where I thought I was focused. So that's good to know, that because that's something that's bothering me.
Oh.
And trying to focus on one question for this was kind of hard.
So usually when that happens, it means that the question it addressed is the underlying issue of why this is happening.
Yeah.
That's usually what I tell people, because like people say, oh, I'm so focused on this, but this is only a problem because of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So it's interesting. I'm glad it made sense to you though.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone asked about the rust. I would say that the rust could represent the eating away at the ability to move, because going backwards is going to. So I think that the so fixated on what's happening is preventing you from actually taking action on what you're doing now. And that's why it's rusting, because it's eating away at that ability. That's my interpretation of it. But it depends on what it means to you, right?
Right. No, I agree with that.
Excellent.
Good job, Phoenix.
Okay.
Phoenix,
Thank you. So the
emotional time. There is one more request to do a reading.
Okay, I absolutely have time. Yeah, I have to clean the ball, so this is a great example. Yeah, I have absolutely. So the ball is heavy. So when we do a reading, we have to cleanse ourselves. So I should disconnect myself from Julia, right? And then I should disconnect myself from the ball. And then I'm gonna cleanse it through my intent and visualization. And I do that until I feel the information leave. So it feels physically lighter to me. And sometimes I give my ball to my client. I say, what do you see in the ball? And sometimes they see something, sometimes they don't. So, okay, so I feel like the ball is cleansed. So who has the other question for this sample?
Hi, Phoenix. My name's Colleen. Thanks for doing this.
Hi. Oh, you're welcome. So, so you're going to want to focus on your question or your topic. You don't have to tell me what it is because it's irrelevant to what I'm receiving anyway. and you're going to want to focus on the ball. Okay, focus all that information into the ball. So the impression I'm getting a lot of clouds and it's kind of light and airy. Okay, I think I got something. Okay, so it's showing me some cotton, like a cotton plantation, and I see a lot of white color coming through. Not so much like smoky white, more like it's just like purity white, a lot of purity energy. And the sky looks very blue and clear. It's showing me two lawn chairs. They are situated in front of where I'm seeing, and they look like they're have like the plastic straps on them. I think it's like orange and blue is what I'm getting. It could be green. It's showing me like a little kid's kiddie pool. That is kind of away. That's another image on it. And I'm seeing like a small bouquet of flowers. I don't have any context for that, but that looks like that's all I'm getting. It's pretty light, so I think I got the stuff in the ball. So you want to think about, what do those things represent to you in your life? How do they relate to what you're thinking about? I could say that lawn chairs, they could be like family time. They could be like relationship, communication. They were empty. So I want to say that there could be a lack of that regarding the situation. A little kid's pool, that could represent themes like fun. It could represent summer. It could represent recreation. It could represent family. It could represent a need to be a parent or something, a parent type figure in someone's life. Summer could represent the summer. It could represent material possessions. It could be earth element. It could be abundance. It could mean a lot of things. You know, it could even be clarity. Depends on what it means to you. What do you associate that symbol with? And then cotton, I energetically felt a lot of cleanliness and like purity. So I think that for you would be innocence, just because I got an overwhelming sense of like clarity and purity as soon as I saw that. So does that answer your question?
Well, it gives me a lot to think about. I think it relates to my questions, but I don't know that it gives me closure about them.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes they do that. And that's why I like to pull a card. I don't have my cards with me, but I can pull a rune. Do you want me to pull a rune for a little bit
Yeah,
of clarity on
sure.
it?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a good example of using multiple tools with scrying, because sometimes people are like, wow, that's deep. It makes so much sense. Other times they're like, it's really deep. It makes sense, but I don't know what it means. And so pulling an additional tool can kind of give you like, oh, that makes more sense because it's telling me this thing. So for the rune, and these ones aren't charged, so I'm kind of going out on a limb. I have purse row. Ooh, okay. Okay, so this is the rune. I think it's inverted, probably not. This is the rune about mysteries and like internal searching and unsolved, not having closure, basically. Could be like the occult rune. So I think that this rune is basically saying that the stuff in that situation, um, I don't think it's meant to be nicely tied up. I think it's more of an exploration. Okay, because this is a rune about not knowing. So if you think about not knowing in relation to what you know, I think that could mean that this experience is really there to open up to something more, and it's up to you to go explore what could come out of it. Does that make
Thank
sense?
you. That
Okay.
makes perfect sense.
So you see, like I use the rune and I use the ball, and the thing to keep in mind when you're using tools, and I know we're out of time, so I'm wrapping up. You want to make sure that it's the same question that you're asking for both tools, because it's the same energy. So the rune is going to go off of all that energy that's in the ball. So I hope that makes sense. Thank you so much for your comments. I'm glad that you liked it, and I hope you enjoyed Puget Sound Pagan Pride online. I'm super excited to be presenting. I'm going to be presenting this workshop again at Sickle this year with the ATC. So I hope that you liked it. I hope you learned a lot. Go check out witchschool.com. It has a class on scrying, and it gives a lot of information in the first degree program that relates to this kind of stuff. Thank you. I hope that you all have a wonderful night. Thank you for coming to my workshop.
Thank you so much, Phoenix. And thank you, everybody, for coming to Pagan Pride today. Have a lovely evening.